Welcome into the first ever live on Twitch episode of the Juke. It's Mitch here with the one and only Dr. Jen Welter. And on this first ever live edition of the Juke, we are going to give you our very own NFL mock draft for the 2021 NFL Draft. We have the top 16 picks of the draft and some crazy trades. Jen, I know you're excited for the NFL draft. What's your favorite part of the draft?
Oh, Mitch, I love hearing the stories of the players, right? Like, where do the guys come from? How do the coaches see them? How we think they'll transition? And, this is that life-changing moment where guys who had that moment where they caught a football and said, I'm going to play in the NFL one day, now are seeing that become a reality. And we get to see it unfold in real time. And I think it's so fun to look at these teams where they are and project where they're going to be with the addition of this new talent.
I think that's a fascinating point, honestly, just because we spend all this time analyzing them as football players and nitpicking the good and the bad about their game, but we never actually consider the human element of the NFL draft, the emotion of that player this year crossing the stage. Last year was a little bit different. I'm excited to see the live element back at the NFL draft. And yeah, the human element is a major part of it. Now we are going to be, of course, computers, and analyze these players as players with our NFL mock draft. Let's waste no more time and let's get right into it. So the number one pick, of course, is the Jacksonville Jags. And we know that they pretty much already told us their pick. Jen,
yeah, I mean, spoiler alert, Mitch, we didn't even talk about it. It looks like it's up on the board. It looks like his position is in Jacksonville is about as secure as, you know, the fact that his hair game is on point, right? Like it really is, looks like it's set in stone. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't have the playbook already from what we've been hearing. So looks like it will be a new Jacksonville Jaguars team headed up by Urban Meyer with Trevor Lawrence at the helm.
Yep, Trevor Lawrence, whether you agree or not that he is a generational talent, Urban Meyer thinks so. And I believe he's a perfect fit for the offense that Urban Meyer wants to bring to the NFL. You know, a little bit of sprinkle here and there, that college game coming to the NFL. So I think Trevor Lawrence is a great fit at number one. The number two pick is pretty much decided across the NFL community that it's going to be Zach Wilson, but I know you, Jen, have a different perspective on this. So maybe give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, you know, I talked to Eric Richards last night, who, you know, is the director of scouting for the All-American Bowl. And he was telling me about Trevor Lawrence's wedding, but, you know, the player who grew up not far from him, you know, none other than Fields. And he said coming out when he was rating them, he had them at 1A and 1B, and nothing has changed his mind in that. And he wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't a smoke screen coming out of New York and that they didn't go another direction. So though you said Vegas has this pretty much on lock, I'm going to tell you that from those in the know, it's still not 100%. And so there could be a little trickery there, because I'll tell you what, those draft boards are one of the toughest things that you could ever assess. It's the biggest secret that NFL teams have beyond the playbook. So we'll see what that doesn't look like.
Yeah, I think when you talk about this pick, it's kind of odd because we've all assumed that it will be Zach Wilson, although we haven't heard a single word from the Jets throughout this process. And way back before Zach Wilson had this breakout season, everybody assumed it would be Justin Fields. So I won't discredit the take, but as my father has always taught me, Vegas doesn't have all those fancy buildings and casinos because they get things wrong. So that's just my take.
Got it. How about San Francisco? What do you think that the 49ers are going to do for us at number 3, Mitch?
Okay, so this is my guy, Jen. Mac Jones out of Alabama is my quarterback. I recently just made a video about why Mac Jones is my favorite quarterback in the NFL draft. Not the best, in my opinion, but my favorite. And I believe Kyle Shanahan's going to see it the same way. He has the IQ that I just fall in love with, the accuracy. He doesn't miss a throw. He's on point. And I think that's exactly what Shanahan wants. I think an interesting thing that not a lot of people talk about is how much and how well he was off of play action in Alabama. And I think Kyle Shanahan, of course, is a big play action passer with his scheme. So I think it's a perfect fit.
Yeah, and listening to Saban said he makes good decisions under duress, which any scout will tell you that's what you need for a quarterback because you will be under duress and you can't forget everything that you knew the second a D lineman comes at you. So I like that pick of Mac Jones to San Francisco.
That's a controversial one. I know fans will disagree, but according to the NFL, no one has said a bad word about Mac Jones. At number 4, this is where the draft could drastically change and my board could drastically change here. I have Kyle Pitts, the generational tight end, going to Atlanta, but some people see it differently and could go quarterback maybe.
Right. So when I talked to Russ Landy, who is obviously up there in Canada, one of the authorities, right? He said he is by far the best tight end he has ever evaluated. The guy is lights out. He's a complete player. He's a big target, especially if Atlanta gets, we've heard the trade talks of possibly Julio Jones. I think if Julio is on his way out, there's no way that you let Kyle Pitts go. The only other thing that I've heard is, I'm going to sound like a broken record here. If he didn't go to the Jets, you could see local kid Fields going to Atlanta because Arthur Blank is a hometown guy. He likes keeping guys close to home that grew up there, and Fields has roots there. So you could see Blank make a play for him as well.
One of the things that I really respect about Blank is that he never really takes the team into his own hands. He lets the football people make the football decisions. Some owners are a little bit different. And I believe that the football people in Atlanta think that Matt Ryan can still play. I believe he can still play, and that's why I'm giving them Pitts here. Just a side point on Julio Jones. If he is traded, do you have a location that you would want to see him in?
I want Aaron Rodgers to have receivers. So maybe he goes there. I mean, if they're not taking a receiver in the first round of this draft because they're notorious, can we please just get Aaron Rodgers help from somewhere? Otherwise, I think he's going to try to throw the ball and catch it himself at some point. So I don't know that they can afford him, but I just want some help for Aaron Rodgers. So maybe that's in the works.
My pick would be Baltimore because I think
that's another one.
Lamar needs a receiver.
That is valid. Yet another person who could really use a receiver. And I will co-sign on that because that drove me crazy all last season.
Speaking of wide receivers, the recent thought is that Jamar Chase will be the pick by Cincinnati, and this is heavily influenced by Joe Burrow because they had a historic college connection with 20 touchdowns and all these yards and all these catches. So at number 5, I have Jamar Chase of LSU going to the Bengals. I think they brought in Riley Reif at right tackle to give them a short-term solution, and I believe they'll go in the second round with an offensive lineman.
Yeah, I've heard the same about Chase, and I do love that connection. The only thing I worry about is the amount of sacks that he takes. And, you have, again, a generational talent, somebody who could lock your team down for a very long time, an old lineman Sewell, and those guys are hard to find. And as we saw with the Kansas City Chiefs, I don't care how great your talent is. If you don't have tackles and your quarterback can't get out of the way of those D linemen, you're not going to win. You're not going to be able to get the ball to Chase. So I'm kind of torn on that. If it's not Chase, I would like to see them take Sewell.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those two. I will say that I think Cincinnati, the worst part of their line, in my opinion, is the interior. Yeah. And I do think their tackles are a little bit better than people give them credit for. At number 6, this might be a little bit of a hot take, but from everything I've gathered, Miami likes Jalen Waddle over Devontae Smith. And I think the decision is going to come down to Jalen Waddle and Penei Sewell. So because they traded Eric Flowers, I thought about Sewell here, but they invested so many players last year on the offensive line with high picks. I think they're going to give them some time and give Tua an Alabama weapon who can play in the slot where Tua, he needs that target over the middle. So I'm going to go Jalen Waddle here.
I do like Jalen Waddle. I have heard great things, and yes, it is a bit of a hot take because there really are some great receivers,
Hmm.
and you may because of how stacked the receiver class is, you may end up saying that there are so many good guys that we could get receivers later in the draft. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't be particularly surprised if we saw some of the receivers slide, not because they're not good, but because there are more options available and there really aren't a lot of options at some of the other position groups, such as there aren't a lot of guys that I want to take in that box territory, whether you're talking linebackers or pass rushers. There aren't a lot of options there. So your receivers may slide just a little bit. But I don't disagree with that take. So we can go with that.
Yeah, I could see Waddle or Miami trading back even because maybe a team wants to trade up for Sewell, which is actually what I have happening at number 7, which I know nobody really has this, but the Chargers have come out and said that they love Sewell and they also, want to get a tackle to protect Justin Herbert. And Sewell played with Justin Herbert. They're good friends. And I'm sure the Chargers would trade up to get this young stud of a tackle that everybody thinks is a blue chip player. And he is, to me, one of the last, I think there's about 10 to 12 blue chip players. And probably the only one at tackle that I'm really confident about. So I think they would be willing to move up here at number 7. And I think Detroit would be willing to move back because they need everything. They don't just need one player. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, they do have quite a lot of needs. I think that's an interesting take that the Chargers come up. I I wonder if he'll still be there at 7,
Yeah.
though. I could see that working, and the Lions do have a lot of needs. You know, I think it depends a lot again on we have that number 4 pick, which is really wide open, and then the Bengals on what they do as well, right? So if they don't go receiver, then they take Sewell. But yeah, that would be a wise decision on the Chargers' part if they could get him at 7, and also a good trade for the Lions.
I think overall there's going to be a space there between 5 and 8 where Sewell will land. And it's a matter of if he slides to 7 or slides to 8, does a team try to trade up to get him if they're really in love with him?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've heard that name so many times. Somebody's going to make a move for him.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. At number 8, I also have another blockbuster trade, and this one is a little crazy. I'm going to be honest. This one's a little wild. I have Washington moving all the way up to number 8 to select Trey Lance. Now, Michael Lombardi a couple weeks ago said that Washington is in love with Trey Lance. And when you look at their roster, they are a very good roster, but a very good young roster. They don't have a lot of needs long term. They need a quarterback long term. I think they are a team that could afford to give away picks to get that guy that they really like. And Carolina, on the other hand, gave away picks for Sam Darnold. They need some players on offense, on the offensive line. I think they can move back and still get that kind of guy, maybe corner later on. So they move back, Washington moves up, and they select Trey Lance.
I would like to see them get a quarterback. I think that's important. And I think it's they got to do it this year. Next year isn't going to be as quarterback heavy. This is really the year that if a team wants one of these guys, they need to go ahead and take that guy. And I like the idea of Ron Rivera. He's early in the program. Really, if he sees the guy that he wants to build around long term, that he goes ahead and gets them and doesn't have the pressure of, he has to be that guy from minute 1. So, obviously we have a little magic there that they can learn from. So that's interesting. That would be a big jump, but I'd like to see it. That's a good one, Mitch.
It would be exciting, right? And Washington, like you said, they have a veteran quarterback that he doesn't have to start right away. And they have Ron Rivera. I love that you brought that up because he had Cam Newton and he kind of knows how to use that type of quarterback.
Absolutely.
At number 9, we have your guy to the Denver Broncos. That is Mr. Parsons from Penn State. Now, I think before a lot of people expected them to go quarterback, but there was a trade today.
Right.
Teddy Bridgewater is going to Denver. I could see them maybe even trading back, but I think Vic Fangio is going to say he's a linebacker guy. That's probably their biggest need on defense, and he's going to take this stud that can do everything on defense.
Yeah, he's definitely a disruptor. And obviously, we had talked about the Broncos' number one need was quarterback until today. So it appears they have, I don't know if Teddy's a long-term solution, but thankfully he's better than, where we were at times in the season, which was no quarterback. Yeah. So, that's been problematic. But yeah, this Parsons is by far, from what everybody says, he is the guy. Coming out of high school, according to Eric, who I talked to yesterday, his big knock was that he wasn't that mature a guy. And yet it appears that through mentorship, which we heard a little bit about, he has really course corrected and has a tremendous upside, both in the maturity that he's gained and the player that he is. So I'm almost surprised that we go number 9 before we get a guy on defense. But if they can get him, they surely should at number 9.
Yeah, Parsons, I'm fascinated. I want him to go to Denver because Fangio is a great D coordinator, and the way that you could use this guy off the edge, inside linebacker, whatever it may be, it's just going to be awesome to watch.
Yeah.
At number 10, we have the second defensive player, and this one's kind of boring because everyone is mocking this. I'm going to be honest. You have some inside information on this selection with Patrick Surtain from Alabama, cornerback from going to Dallas.
Well, Jerry has said publicly that he sees himself getting a defensive player, a good one at 10. I absolutely adore Patrick Surtain Jr. and Sr. on and off the field. So I'm glad that you get him. I also, as we know, last season, there was no D in Dallas. So they better invest in some defense. And when you can really shore up that cornerback position, it allows you to do a lot more things on the defensive side of the ball. And that defense is going to look completely different because, after their bad play last year, they had to get that coordinator out of there. And so let's give them some talent to work with. It's definitely a defensive player, and you can't do much better than Surtain.
Right. They'll have 2 Alabama corners on the perimeter with Diggs from last year and Surtain from this year in the new Dan Quinn defense. Now, number 11 is going to get interesting here, Jen. We have a trade.
Oh.
The team coming up to number 11 will be the New England Patriots. Now, as soon as I say that, everyone's going to say Justin Fields, Justin Fields, Justin Fields. I think they're going to go wide receiver. I have a strong feeling they're going to go wide receiver. And I think they absolutely love Devontae Smith out of Alabama, the Heisman winner. It's obviously inside information there, Saban, Belichick connection. They need a receiver really badly, even still going out there and spending money on wide receiver. Edelman just retired. You could put Smith in there. He's a game breaker, game changer. And I think they love Cam a lot, and they want to give them all the opportunity to succeed.
Yeah, you definitely want a guy like Devontae Smith, and I don't know if it's too early to put him in there, but, I've heard great things of Davis Mills out of Stanford, and that he is the highest football IQ quarterback in this draft, right? That he is by far that guy, and that he likely, if he'd had a full season, not a modified one with 6 games, that he would be higher on boards. He is a Belichick type of guy. So I don't know that he trades up to take him, but I definitely want to see what could happen with Davis Mills out of Stanford. But since you have them trading up to go Devontae Smith, I'll just throw that in about Parsons. But, we'll let you go with Devontae at that and see where we unfold from there.
Hey, I'm a Patriots fan, obviously. I think that's what they should do, honestly, if it was me. So maybe it's a little bit of a fan bias there, but is there anything about Devontae Smith that anybody's told you about the kid?
I don't know as much about him personally, but I think that might be one that we could ask good old Woody Womack a little bit later, because I think some of these personal stories that he's going to be able to share to us might even change how we see this draft board falling out. Because I know, that's where my draft board went yesterday, getting some insider information. So,
right. Number 12. This is a case of where there is smoke, there is fire to me. Of course, Philadelphia did trade back and they gathered some more picks. I think the biggest need on their roster is a corner. And so many people are talking about JC Horn to Philadelphia that I'm starting to buy it. He's a physical corner, very big. I think he could play in that new system that they're going to run on the other side of Darius Slay. I like the fit personally.
Well, there are so many needs for the Eagles.
Yeah.
At times during last season, I used to joke and say that I thought they were picking up people out of the parking lot because I didn't even know who Wentz was throwing the ball to. I am a little concerned about their O-line as well. We do have some O-line talent that they could have picked up there. They have a lot of needs. Corner is always a good place to go. They worry me. They have so much work to do. So corner is not a bad place to start. I don't know if I would have passed up on an O-lineman though, but here we go. Okay.
Rock, paper, scissors. Maybe that's how they decide.
For sure.
No, we're good. But I didn't mention with the number 11, the trade there, I do believe that New England would want to jump Philly because I think they are a big candidate to take a receiver. So I think if New England wants a receiver like Smith, they're going to have to jump Philadelphia. And I think that forces the Eagles more into the direction of the defense. At number 13, I think this is a perfect scenario for Detroit after trading back from number 7. They pick up the right tackle, Rashawn Slater, who can play, left tackle, right tackle. He can maybe even play guard. And given his versatility and given his pro-ready ability right now, I think he's a great pick for Detroit. They like their left tackle. They signed long-term Decker. I think he plays right tackle right away and gives them a solid foundation on the O-line.
Yeah, he's another O-lineman that I've heard great things about. If he makes it that far, then yes, Detroit should absolutely get him. They should get everyone who can play football that they can possibly get because they need a lot of help as well. Again, I struggle to think about the Eagles passing up on any O-line after watching how much, Wentz got sacked last season. But, they certainly can't go wrong there in Detroit if he's available.
We have a few comments from the chat here. Thank you, Mr. Producer. We have Rick, the bad boy, saying the Eagles should trade back to take Fairley. And personally, he's my favorite corner in the draft, but I do see him dropping because of the injury concerns. And now I believe he just came down with COVID. So the guy's just unlucky overall. But I love his talent. I just feel like not playing last year, the injuries, I think that's going to move him down, maybe into a less risky space where teams can take a chance on him. Jen, do you have any takes on him as a player?
Honestly, I was reading the comments here, so I'm not going to add to that one at this point. I feel bad for him getting COVID at this point. It's just like insult to injury. But
he can't go to the draft now.
I know, and probably better that he didn't. Can you imagine if all of them came down with COVID?
Yeah. Luckily, they found it out now.
Right.
We have Mr. Below Man. What's going on, bro? He says, like the boldness with these trades. Yeah, well, I'm not trying to do the same mock draft as everybody else. Jen, that would just be boring.
I mean, it is. And that's what makes it so fun is if and that's what makes the draft so interesting is that, teams they have a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? Like it literally is, okay, if we go here, then we're going to go to this. And that's where those times come. And if you don't have any trades, then it's going to be pretty straightforward or relatively speaking. I do like, Teapot 74 is intrigued with Justin Fields. I am too. He is going to
Yeah.
be one of the wild cards in this draft, right? Like, how do you go from being presumably at the top to now on some draft boards sliding all the way to 32, right? Like
Yeah.
that's pretty rough.
Yeah, he's probably the wild card, like in terms of he could go as high as, I mean, some people are still mocking him to 3. I don't see him going 3, but I could see him going as high as 4. And Jen sees him going 2. And he could go, I think like mid 20s is as low as where he could land. So we'll see. I believe that is Thomas of Catch the Blitz. If it is, shout out to you, man. If not, sorry, I'm wrong. All right. At number 14, we have Minnesota. They're not going to go quarterback here. They like Kirk Cousins. So do I. They're going to go offensive line, which is a massive need for the Minnesota Vikings. I'm going to go with Vera Tucker here out of USC. I think he's a guy that started a lot of games. He's played guard, played tackle. This has been one that's mocked a lot to Minnesota, so it's fairly boring, but it's mocked for a reason because they really need help at a lot of different offensive line positions, and he can play wherever they need him to play.
Yep, I agree. Please get some line in there.
Yeah, it's really fundamental to what they do offensively too. They are a run-heavy team as well.
Yeah, you got to keep Cook cooking, and if he is a difference maker. And that means you need to have the line, you need to be able to move people around, and it's worth investing in.
So the Giants traded back to 15, and I don't see them going wide receiver at number 11 with Devontae Smith. Like some people think that's going to happen. I just think they invested so much money in Kenny Golladay. I like the receivers they have there. They have other needs, and Dave Gettleman has preached for a while that he was going to bring pass rushers to this team. My favorite pure pass rusher in this draft is Jalen Phillips. And although he does have some concerns about injuries, and people have even questioned his love for the sport, which I'm not going to go there, I really like the talent. And he's one of the only players that actually Joe Judge went to his pro day. So
okay.
I think there's a connection there, and they could definitely use a guy off the edge. Jen?
Yeah, I mean, that's home to me. That's position. This draft is not particularly overwhelming with the pass rushers, and yet they need one. So that's probably why he went to the pro day, to just ensure that the upside was what he thought it could be. Because that's really what it is, right? If the productivity wasn't quite where you want it to be, does he have what you think can be finessed into it, I guess, right? Like, does he have the upside, and will he trend that way in terms of productivity? And obviously you have to stay healthy, but
right. And Patrick Graham's got a good rep as a D coordinator, and they also have Peppers there, I believe, as a coach on the D-line linebackers, I believe. And he's been pretty good. I think he used to coach in New England, actually. And I think he'll coach up Jalen Phillips there off the edge. The final pick of our Juke mock draft will not be Justin Fields, but we'll talk about Justin Fields in a second. But Kyler Murray's team is not going to pick Justin Fields. If he gets picked here, they're going to trade back. My pick for them is maybe a shocker, but I've seen the ties a little bit that Cliff wants an offensive weapon. And if it's not a receiver, they have a massive need at running back. And a lot of people like Najee Harris out of Alabama. He's a guy that can catch the football. He's got a bit of power to him. I think he'll bring a toughness to this offense that was not there, and a really nice complement to what they can do with Kyler's quickness and his power.
Yeah, I really like Najee to Arizona on this one. It might be a little bit early. I know running backs,
It's
maybe
bold.
not this early. So it is bold, but if we're going to talk about it, let's talk about Najee Harris, who, when I talked to Eric yesterday, and obviously has had him at the All-American Bowl, he likened him to Derrick Henry, first of all, in terms
Wow.
of the size speed combination. And so he said he was most like Derrick Henry. When he saw him on the field, it was like, it was just different. And the funny part was, he's a smaller time guy, right? Smaller, like town, like really close to family. And he's committed to Alabama. He goes to play in the All-American Bowl. And he's supposed to fly right from the All-American Bowl to Alabama. And, midweek, I think it was maybe Wednesday, he starts getting a little bit homesick and said he asked him to change his flight so he could go home first before going to Alabama. And Nick Saban called Eric and said, if you don't get that guy on the plane directly to Alabama, you will never get another Alabama player again, because they were afraid he might have backed out of Alabama and stayed closer to home, which Najee did admit to later that that's what he was thinking about. So, good guy, very loyal, and the off the field stuff, other than almost not getting on the plane, really, really good things to say about him. So I just thought I'd let you know.
That's pretty cool. I mean, that speaks to the respect he has with his teammates. That is our mock draft, top 16. Of course, we didn't fill in the rest of the draft. If you want to know where Justin Fields lands, currently right now, I have him going to the Steelers, actually, as the future quarterback once Ben retires, probably after this year. So he can sit behind Ben, learn from Ben, and then take over next season. After the break, we will have Woody Womack, who's going to break down the draft, some of the prospects, and some of the stories and skills behind these players. So stay tuned. We are back. The Juke podcast, first time ever on Twitch Live. Jen, we have a special guest.
We do. I like my insiders, Mitch. And when I try and tell people that a lot of the information that they hear around the NFL draft is actually misinformation, oh no, they wouldn't do that. I'm like, yes, actually they would. And I can't think of a better person to get into this discussion than the one and only Woody Womack. And Woody, is it true that sometimes teams will feed misinformation just to get the pressure off or the conversation to change?
Oh yeah, big time. And guess what? I'm such a sucker. I fall for it every year. I was telling you guys about the Kyler Murray draft. I had such a reliable source with the Cardinals. The same guy who told me that they were trading for DeAndre Hopkins like 10 days, like when DeAndre Hopkins wasn't even getting traded. And I was like, DeAndre Hopkins, you're insane. They told me we're not taking Kyler Murray. We're passing on Kyler Murray. We want Quinnen Williams. He's going to be the future of our defense. And I fell for it hook, line, and sinker, called all my friends, talked them into gambling on it, and everybody lost. And they obviously picked Kyler Murray, and I'm an idiot. So.
Well, I think it's a really important thing to say, because at this time, especially, everybody's guessing, right? Like everybody is really making their best guesses. They have, information on obviously what needs teams have and, what kind of guys these guys like. But it is literally the, probably better kept secrets than like Area 51 when it comes to draft boards and teams and what they're looking at. So the first thing I want to ask you is, can we get that mock draft back? Because although we put it up there, there's a few that I might have not agreed with Mitch on, but this was his mock draft. So Is there anything that stands out to you on that one? I'll give you one that I heard yesterday from Eric of, the All-American Bowl, and he said he thinks it's a smoke screen at number 2. He does not see Wilson going there. And he is actually, going a different way with that. So
I'm not buying your smoke screen, Jen.
not buying this. Why not? What's your problem with him anyway?
With who?
With my smoke screen. Why do you not like him?
I just really like Zach Wilson. I think the Jets do too.
You just like Zach Wilson's hair because it's like yours.
No, I think Zach Wilson is a baller. And also, I trust Vegas here.
I know you're trusting Vegas, but when somebody says you don't pass full fields, and I think he's a smokescreen, you've seen him now fall all the way to 32 on some boards, and that could be just ridiculous. So I want to hear from Woody.
That's a good place to start because I don't even have Justin Fields on here.
I know that's why I started there.
The field slander has got to stop. This is insane. What's going on? Like, are you going to take Trey Lance? Did you guys watch Trey Lance play that game this year? He was terrible. I'm sorry.
This is what I think will happen. By the way, this is not my personal board, like who I would pick.
All right.
But the field slander is a bit ridiculous. Woody, do you know Fields? I have a feeling that you might.
Oh yeah, I live here. I live in Atlanta. Of course, I've known Justin Fields. I ranked him as a 4-star when he had no offers, so put that on my resume. But like this whole thing about like his work ethic, and I mean, it's insane. I can tell you, like, one of the things a lot of people don't realize is when the lockdown started in March, a lot of these football players were like, "No, we're not doing that." And I remember Justin Fields training with Quincy Avery, who's a QB trainer who also trains Trey Lance and a couple other guys, and they were right down the street and begged, please let me go just stand in the bleachers and film them from afar, because remember we had no sports going on and we just needed content. But I mean, those dudes were out there every day, 2-3 hours a day doing on-field stuff in addition to the off-field stuff, and he's been doing that, basically every day, the whole off season. He then begged to play. He could have sat out the season and been rich anyway. Instead, they literally begged to play, and then he played the whole season, and then he played hurt in multiple games. Like, what are we talking about? Like, where did this? I just don't know where it came from. That he's like, alleged character issues or whatever. Like, I hate the anonymous, I've talked to people in the know and they say this. It's like, guess what? I'm a person in the know and nobody's talked to me. Like, NFL teams brag about all this due diligence they do. Pick up the phone and call me. You guys know how to reach me.
Well, I mean, Woody, between you and Eric with the All-American Bowl, you've seen all of the top guys because they essentially either played like in your bowl game, right, or theirs, right? So you've seen and know all of the top guys personally.
Right. And I mean, even like Zach Wilson, who's like an off the radar guy, he came to our camp. Kyle Pitts. I mean, if I showed you guys the video of Kyle Pitts from our camp, you'd be like, is that dude an offensive lineman now? Like, he'd move like he moves now.
Wow.
Yeah, like he's all, I don't know, he's just like bottom heavy, I guess is the term that you'd say. He just doesn't look like fluid. And obviously he is a superstar now and like one of the best tight end prospects in the decade. But yeah, we've seen them all. That's the thing. We've seen them all. We've talked to them. A lot of them, especially this year in particular, their families, their trainers, everybody. So that's what's crazy is that the teams love to, we dig in, we talk to the neighbors. It's like, you guys they don't dig that hard. Look at Isaiah Wilson. How hard did they dig on him 1 year and he's completely out of league. So
yeah, no, it drives me a bit nuts. And that's why, I was like, I want the guys who have actually had these guys out there. I don't understand why you are not in all of these conversations. Frankly, that's just my opinion. But hey, I'm a little different, obviously. And so this is where I think the real due diligence comes from. So I'm glad to get that slander out of the way. Could it be a smoke screen to the Jets?
He's not going to go to the Jets. I don't, but Eric's a little, I don't know. Eric lives down in Naples now. He's drinking Mai Tais on the beach at 11 o'clock. I think that might be a little too much, but if he falls out of the top 10, I'm going to be shocked. I think even if the teams that are there pass on him, someone will trade back up and get him. I just don't see it. Like the tools. Remember, after he beat Trevor Lawrence in the playoff, we were like, should he go one instead of Lawrence? Like, it, I mean, that wasn't that long ago. He played one
Right.
game after that, and he was hurt. So
Right. It wasn't. And I've been looking around like, are we serious right now? Like when I heard 32 from someone yesterday in their mock draft, I was like, come on, this is getting absolutely ridiculous. The other one that Eric said is that you could see him possibly go at 4 because of his Atlanta roots and that blank likes guys that are local guys. Any
yeah, he
thoughts
does.
there?
Yeah, they took AJ Terrell last year, who was an Atlanta guy, and he actually was viewed as a reach by a lot of people. He had a very good rookie year. Um, you know, if I'm them, I don't know. I look at Penei Sewell, and I think if he falls out of the top 5, a lot of these teams are going to be kicking themselves. Like if we're going based on talent, and yeah, I think he was hurt by opting out. I think he should have played. He kind of like out of sight, out of mind. But we're talking about arm length and stuff like that. Dude's 20 years old and he already won the Outland Trophy. Like once again, we're overthinking it a little too much. This was viewed as a generational talent,
Right.
and now we're talking, oh, he might fall to 9, he might fall to 10. Like he should be a top 5 pick.
I agree. I agree completely. So if you were doing top 5 right now, let's just get you, actually, let's do top 6 because it gets a little bit interesting past the 5. Where do you see them going?
So obviously we're taking Trevor 1. I think Zach Wilson's going to go 2. I wouldn't take him 2. I'd probably lean with Eric and take Fields. I think Max going 3, and I think the 49ers have tried to be cute with like all this stuff, but it's like you wouldn't have traded 3 picks if you didn't know who you were going to take at that time.
Woody, we don't know if everyone's going to be alive on Sunday. Though.
Right. Yes. What an all-time.
It's great.
So he can come to college football anytime. That's a classic college football coach thing. Like the time that Nick Saban didn't know it was election day or whatever, and then let's see, at 4, I personally think it's either Pitts or Chase there. I'm going to go with Pitts probably because I think they're going to give Matt Ryan give him one more big weapon and try to have a big year with them. And then I think it will be Sewell at 5. I know Joe Burrow is probably begging him to take Chase, but that's
why I went with Chase.
Right, but keep in mind T. Higgins was awesome last year as a rookie. I know AJ Green's gone, but they have other weapons there too. So that's my pick there. So and then at 6, I think the Dolphins will hope Jamar Chase falls into their lap. And if he doesn't, I wouldn't be shocked if they took Devontae Smith. I know you have him a little bit lower than that, but I think they love those Alabama guys, and I think they would like to get him if they could.
Yeah, okay. I agree. I had Sewell with the Bengals as well. Mitch and I kind of went back and forth on that one. Do you think are there any hidden gems that you're not hearing talked about to the extent that you should?
Yeah, some of the guys who have fallen back that I've surprised. I mean, people will laugh at me. Sean Wade from Ohio State, like he did not have a good year, but I mean, this was a guy that you thought was going to be a first rounder if he came out last year. Yep. And he moved around a little bit. I personally think, in the way the NFL is now, he's going to fit in perfectly because he can play inside. He could also move over to safety. I mean, we've seen some guys that are like him that have done really well. I like Tylan Wallace from Oklahoma State, the receiver. He had an injury, and I think that's hurting him a little bit. Another guy that has also fallen is Alex Leatherwood from Alabama. And I think he's a perfect example of getting caught up in the post-draft, over analyzing. I just think he's a great player. And I think you're looking at a 12-year NFL vet there. And he's going to come in and I promise you he'll be starting year 1 on whatever team drafts him. If he falls to the 2nd or 3rd round, he's going to be a steal for sure.
Yeah.
I know you said you had inside information with Arizona, and I know you're not going to tell us regardless if you had it or not, but I was not sure who to put at 16, but I feel like Cliff kind of wants an offensive weapon. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, they did the right thing last year, and they took Simmons, and he was kind of up and down. I think, he was sort of a disappointment, but he came on later in the year. But, come on, Cliff's going to be like, look, I let you guys take a defensive guy last year. Like,
Yeah.
give me a weapon. And, who knows if Najee's around, it seems a little high. Maybe they trade back and take him. But I mean, it would be sweet. Imagine Najee and Kyler Murray back there.
Yeah.
Like how much fun that would be to watch.
Yeah. I mean, it would be a lot of fun for sure. We were talking earlier, and I believe there was a particular highly touted guy now who, tweeted once upon a time that he really wanted you to profile him, but you wouldn't even follow him back. I mean, this is the level that you're at, Woody. Like, these guys are throwing themselves at you. Can you tell us that story and maybe who that particular player might be?
So this was actually like, it happened when I was cleaning out some of the Rivals accounts myself in the DMs and like scrolling back through and deleting stuff out. And I found one from Mac Jones from like, I think it was 2015. And he said, how do I get a profile on Rivals? Didn't have a profile yet. The person who was running the account at the time said, oh, message Woody Womack. He covers your area. And Mac wrote back, well, he doesn't follow me back for some reason. So I saw that and I laughed because, I got to know Mac really well as a prospect. And like, I still talk to him now. I actually went to a wedding I guess it was 2019 now, where the bride was an Alabama fan. And I just texted Mac and was like, hey, can you do a video real fast? I want to give it to him as a wedding gift. And he like did it. No questions asked right then and there. But
Awesome.
yeah, I got to know Mac. He ended up winning. I mean, he must have won. He came to like every Rivals camp he could there for like a 2-year period. He probably won 6 or 7 MVPs. We have so many pictures of him holding up the trophies. And, but when he won the national championship, I tweeted that out with, everybody
Overall,
starts
great,
somewhere.
Pick.
And it went viral. And then I had a bunch of people calling me a dumbass.
Of course you were, right? Like, you should know everybody before they were somebody. I mean, that's your job, right? Like, you're supposed to know everybody.
Right. And now, well, the thing that I'm afraid of is that went viral and I picked up thousands of followers on multiple platforms and got a bunch of DMs. So I guarantee you the next Mac Jones probably DM'd me and I probably missed it. So, we'll be able to run that back in 3 or 4 years. Someone else will be like, he never replied to me. So something to look forward to.
Well, yeah, for everybody out there, if you've DM'd him before, make sure you do it again, because, you may have to, if Mac Jones can't get through, then, what makes you think you could?
Right. Listen, when you're verified, you get the filter. It filters the messages to like message requests and you don't see them all. I'm sorry. I wish I saw them all.
It is true. It is very true. I've been accused of that once or twice myself, and I'm like, I didn't know. I didn't not like you never see it. It's just a very weird thing. It's like the universe would never have let you see it.
Right.
That is hilarious. So what kind of guy is Mac Jones?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same thing.
Yeah.
So, Mac is like, obviously his nickname's the Joker. And like, I mean, he's just one of these guys that like, I mean, everybody loves him like everywhere he goes. And he kind of just, he doesn't, even when he was younger, he like didn't know, he doesn't have any boundaries of like, hey, you're a kid and these are adults I'm talking to. Like, he would have no problem roasting you, like making fun of you at any time, DMing you, making fun of you. And like, ultimate competitor, he used to DM me other kids' profiles and be like, you think this kid's better than me? You think this kid's better than me? You think, and like looking back at him, this was when he was like a 3-star, like early on, he was totally right. But he'd be like, you're telling me this kid sucks. I watched his film. He can't throw, like,
Wow.
And he used
awesome.
to, honestly, like with Tua, he used to say, I'm better, he would want Tua to come to stuff so he could compete against him, even when they were both committed there. And I'm sure they're like, best buds now. But at that time, Tua was in Hawaii, Max in Florida. They couldn't be farther apart. They're both committed to the same place. And Kiffin really, I mean, that tells you what you need to know about Mac Jones's personality is him and Kiffin were like two peas in a pod. They loved each other and they still do.
That's
so
amazing.
Like, it was kind of like Tua is Saban's guy and Mac is Kiffin's guy or whatever. And so yeah, he would love to be like, Tua sucks. He used to call Tua like Tua star, like he was a 2-star recruit. He had other nicknames for Tua too that I can't say. That I'm waiting to have him on my podcast so I can be like, he used to have a nickname for Tua that anyway he would make fun of him constantly, but he's a competitor, and like that's the thing. Like over the years, the quarterbacks who've busted and the quarterbacks who've succeeded, in retrospect, you can be like, I knew that guy was going to be a bust. Like he didn't want to come to stuff. He didn't want to compete. Like, Trevor Lawrence was basically certified as the number one player in his class from the time he entered high school.
Right.
And that dude would be at everything competing. Like, we have a lot of videos that we've been running this week of Mac and Trevor competing side by side in like
Right.
a QB competition. And like, that's what Trevor did. He flew places. He showed up, he competed. He wasn't, hiding, or he didn't get his ranking and then, have a media team. Like we see some of these recruits now that's like, especially with the pandemic year, they got their rankings essentially without doing anything. And now they're like,
Right.
I'm ranked high. Why am I going to go compete anywhere? And those are the red flags. But the guys who love to show up and go head to head, and that's why the Trevor is not, doesn't love football story it was insane. It was an out of context quote. Trevor, I remember when one of the other recruiting services dropped him from 1 to 2, he DM'd me and was like, are they serious? What are we talking about here? Because he went to like a 7-on-7 and didn't play well. And he said, it's almost like I'm punished for going to compete. If I would have just stayed home,
Right.
I would still be number one, but that's not my nature. So, just Mac, Mac will compete with you on anything, shooting baskets into the trash. You know what I mean? Like he's going to beat you and then B, let you know about it when he does beat you. And that's what I love personally. That's what I love. I love dudes who are like that, who love to compete.
Woody, in terms of quarterbacks who are like that, you just made me think of Cam Newton, who is the fiercest competitor. Like I've played many years in his kickball tournament, and the dude is out there in Timberlands, and he is like, it's his tournament, and he is bent on destroying everyone, right? And he's so fun about it. Like he has his whole team doing spirit fingers, and they fall in love with him, but he's like, oh no, we're winning. And by the way, when we win, we take your 2 best, right? So you beat a team and then you take their 2 best players, which is kind of what the NFC least needed to do last year in order to be competitive. But, you can't, those guys are special, right? Like there's a special energy when you're around it, and you're going to see them trending upwards. Who else is like that? Who else are your fierce competitors in the that we're looking at now?
Jamar Chase is like that, which is, I was surprised he sat out the season. And I think it probably killed him to be at home, sitting home. And it was like a business decision. And I think he might have saw the situation with where they were quarterback wise. And I'm out of here. But same way. He was pretty well established. He was like a solid 4-star recruit. And we have these combines, which are open to anyone to come in and test. And maybe if they do well, we invite them back the next day to compete in the camp. And he showed up to the combine, and I was like, Jamar, what are you doing here? And he was like, I was like, you coming tomorrow? And he was like, oh no, I want to get my times so I know what I need to improve on. So he came and ran, and he actually ran like a 4.69 40, which, is super slow, obviously. And he ran a 4.38 at his pro day. So that tells you the improvement he made from his junior year in high school to the draft process, just in 4 years. So he's one of those guys, totally loves to compete, and was kind of not viewed as the guy in Louisiana in his class. Terrace Marshall, his teammate, was ranked higher than him. And they played on the same 7-on-7 team. So Jamar was kind of some teams even thought Jamar was going to be a tight end because of that speed I mentioned. They thought he might be an H-back. And he kind of took that personally. I'm not a tight end, I'm a wide receiver. And obviously, look at his development. But yeah, just got the dog factor, as the kids say.
Right.
He's a dog for sure. Then Devontae Smith is the same way. Like I get the size concerns, but at some point when you've been successful at every level and you had the success he had in the SEC, I don't worry about him weighing 170 pounds or whatever. Like I don't think that's going to be an issue. And he's the same way. He played both ways in high school. I played every snap. He was also the kick and punt returner and like the gunner, So I mean, we're talking like this is a dude who would run down and kill people. And probably, honestly, if he played DB, I still think he'd be like in the first round conversation as a corner if he decided to do that as his career. Because he was committed to Georgia as a corner before he decommitted and ended up going to LSU.
All right, Woody. Well, we got to go to break. And after break, we're going to get the answer to who was better in those competitions, Mac Jones or Trevor Lawrence. Stay tuned. We are back live. The Juke, Jen Welter, Woody, the all-name team. What's going on, man?
It is an all-name team.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy to be hanging out with you guys, talking about just letting me talk and talk and talk. That's all. If not, I'd be talking to the dog and my daughter about this stuff. So at least the camera's on.
Woody, we do have some questions for you. But before we do get to some of the fan questions that we have lined up here, I do want to ask you to answer that question. Who was winning those competitions? Was it Mac Jones or Trevor Lawrence back in the day?
So the one time they really went head to head was at the Rivals Quarterback Challenge. That was Mac's junior year, it was Trevor's sophomore year, and it went down to the line. Mac number 1, Trevor number 2, and Emory Jones, who's going to start for Florida this year, was number 3. So, yeah, Mac got the win, and I think I forget what the award he won was, and then Trevor won the Instant Impact Award, which turned out to be true as he won the national championship as a freshman. But that's when, Trevor hates the nickname Sunshine, just hates it, right?
I would too.
Right. I mean, because it's like every quarterback with long hair is like automatically Sunshine. So Mac started calling him Pony because he looks like a pony with like the mane of hair. So we tried to make Pony happen, and we even had like emojis and stuff, but it never really caught on. But that was the nickname Mac made up for him.
Hashtag Pony. Everybody out there, get the hashtags going, baby. All right, let's get to some questions about the draft. First one is, will the Patriots, my favorite team, trade up to possibly select a quarterback? Now, I have them trading up to get Devontae Smith, but
I don't know. I think if Fields is available at like 9, I could see him jumping in there and trying to get him. Bill Simmons has been obsessed with Justin Fields for like the last 2 months. I mean, it's like the only thing he talks about. So hopefully for his sake, they get him. But I think if they trade up, it's to get a quarterback. I don't see, Belichick loves to trade down, not trade up. Of course, they spend all that money in free agency, which he normally never does. But I think they like the idea of having, we've seen it work for a lot of teams, the Ravens and elsewhere, where they get that quarterback on the rookie deal, and then you could spend a lot of money on other guys around him. So I could see him trying to get either Lance or Fields if they're still hanging around there at the back end of the top 10.
Makes sense.
What about Davis Mills out of Stanford? What do you think about him?
Oh, my guy, Davis. Oh, member of the family. What's crazy is I think he only played in 11 games. But if you look at his stats, I mean, very good. The only problem with Davis is he was always nicked up. I mean, he got blown up his senior year in the state championship game on like an illegal hit, and he got a concussion, and I think he hurt his knee on the same play. It was such a crazy hit. There was like a total targeting. I mean, it would have just been the other guy would have been thrown out of the game. But Davis has it all. I mean, you're talking about like so smart. I mean, I guarantee you, when he got on the boards for these teams, whether it was on Zoom or whatever, I promise you he blew them away. And he's kind of a nerd. Like the way he talks is like, if you didn't know any better and he showed up with like glasses on, you would think he was a professor. So I love Davis. I think I honestly could see a team being enamored with him and either trading into the back end of the first round or trading up on day 2 to take him in those first 5 to 10 picks. Now the debate is him versus Kellen Mond, probably for that whatever number quarterback that is, 5, I guess. But I think I would take Mills. I would not take Kellen Mond. Kellen Mond is like to me, he progressed under Jimbo Fisher, but I don't think he's like a franchise quarterback. I wouldn't spend a first round pick on him.
If you could see Davis Mills going anywhere, I kind of thought either Patriots or Shanahan based on their offenses. Any thoughts on those? Knowing that he was, as I heard, the smartest football IQ prospect out there.
Yeah, I like both of those fits. Honestly, that would be like a total Patriots move to either trade back and get him later, or try to trade up and get him at the start of the second round. And him and Mac actually were training together down in Mobile with QB country, which they've had all types of guys. They have David Jones, they have Gardner Minshew, and guys like that who have had success. So I do like Davis. I think there's a reason. Like, honestly, if you look at him physically, other than Trevor, he's like how you would draw a quarterback, and he can really run. Now, maybe the injuries have taken some off of him, but I mean, in high school, he could get out and really scoot. And I bet his 40 time. I don't know if he ran at his pro day, but if it would have been like a combine situation, he would have like shocked some people by running like a 4.7, 4.65 type thing.
I like it.
All right. We have some more questions here. Or some comments as well. TKL, Madden YouTube, or maybe Tackle, I'm not sure. Trey Lance has the highest potential of any quarterback in the draft. What do you think?
No. Well, listen,
no.
Like, I haven't seen. I don't watch North Dakota State play every game. Obviously, he had a ton of hype coming off of that redshirt freshman season. But then, so I went to Elite 11 last summer in Nashville, and he was out there throwing, and like they were mixed in with the high schoolers. And I was like, who is this guy? Because there was one 3-star kid who was in there who had no offers. And I was like, oh, that must be him. And watching him throw, I was like, oh, yeah, that's him. And it was Trey Lance. So that was like my first impression of it. Wasn't good. Now, the second day they did like a pro day thing, and Justin Fields and him went through it like one after another. And he looked really good there. So I think he has to find the right fit. But I don't think he needs, I wouldn't throw him out there early. And I think I'm worried about him being a top 10 pick, getting thrown to the Wolves, especially if it's like Denver. And then we're in like a Drew Lock 2.0. I mean, this guy needed a redshirt season in college at North Dakota State. So like I said, Quincy speaks highly of him. He's been living here in Atlanta, and he's a nice guy. And like, him and Justin are close friends too. But I just don't think in terms of that. No, I mean, Trevor Lawrence is if you go back and listen to my podcast, you'll hear me calling him the best football player ever from the time he was like 15. And I still am sticking with that. I wouldn't rank anybody's potential higher than his, even with what we've seen from him already.
But do you follow him back, though, is my question.
Do I follow Trey Lance? No, I probably Trevor, yes, because I was looking at some DMs today to try to see if I had anything funny to tweet out of him. But there was one video where somebody said, there was a tweet where somebody said, let that sink in. And then Trevor sent a picture of a sink at a front door, which made me laugh I don't know, so stupid.
Right. Like, what? What was this?
Right. It was like, let that sink in, let the sink in the house. But it was so dumb. That shows you my sense of humor. But yes, Trevor still follows me. When you get unfollowed, that's when the pain hurts. When they grow beyond you and unfollow you, that's a painful moment.
Yeah, we're gonna have some serious issues if I get the unfollow notification. What about Najee? How do you feel about Najee? Do you think he'll get picked? And if so, who do you liken him to?
So he was actually our number one overall player in his class in 2017. I think Davis Mills was like top 10 in that class. Kellen Mond was a 5-star in that class. Cam Akers was number 3. And of course, he had a good rookie year. He went to Florida State, and it was a total disaster. If he went to Alabama, I think he would have been a first-round pick, maybe even last year. But in terms of Najee, he's dynamic. I mean, and I think he fits perfectly into what the NFL has become. I mean, he's not, to me, he's not like a 30 carry guy, but he is a big bodied guy, and he can take the pounding, he can catch passes, and he doesn't have a lot of tread on the tires. When you compare him to some of the other backs, even Travis Etienne. I mean, Travis Etienne took a ton of hits in college, and I think that Najee can be the guy. We talked about him with the Cardinals. I think the Steelers could also use somebody like him. I think he'd be perfect as like a safety valve for Big Ben or whoever ends up being the quarterback there down the line. So I think a lot of teams like him, and I think, I know we're not supposed to spend first round picks on running backs, but I do think he has that type of value.
Coach is worrying about the Cowboys here. He says he's concerned about Jerry Jones selling the farm on Pitts. I hope not. They need defense. Who's a prospect you think could fit the Cowboys?
Oh, they need Patrick Surtain, right? I mean, obviously. I think that seems like the slam dunk pick there.
Yeah.
Fairley was in the mix for a while, and I know teams are worried about his back, which, like back injuries they can be so like precarious, annoying. They can come back. Nothing can cause them. I think that's why he dropped. But Surtain is like, once again, build a DB in the draft. He's got everything you want. He's got the film. He's got the measurables. He has the family bloodlines. Like it's all right there. And he's a slam dunk top 10 pick. He's a lockdown guy, and he's got, size, length, and everything you want. So I think if you're a Cowboys fan, I know everyone always wants offense. And that's one of the things when you look at the mock drafts, you're like, are there really going to be 9 offensive players in the top 10 and only 1 defensive player? Or I know you have Micah Parsons in there, but I can't imagine there's just 1 in the top 10.
I kind of said the same thing.
I can, though. That's the thing.
Well, I mean, but it's the flash, right? And if that's all you see, that's what they're going to talk about, right? Whereas, the football people, when we kind of get in, you're like, yeah, but you really need defense. And, getting a corner like Surtain can change the dynamics, right? Once you have one side on lock, it unlocks the things that you can do in terms of, secondary, how you're going to use your linebackers, stuff like that. And, Mitch, I don't know if you knew this, but Surtain Sr., they have basically record-breaking numbers this year with 7 guys coming out of that Hollywood, Florida. I'm a Florida girl, so I gotta highlight my Florida people coming out of the same high school. And when I talked to Surtain Sr. the other day, he reminded me that I had spoken to all those guys in the locker room. And he's like, I think you should take credit for it. And I said, no, but I will be proud about it. So that family pedigree and knowing how to be a pro is a really important factor that, we're not hearing quite enough talked about. But then again.
Yeah, we saw it with Antoine Winfield Jr. last year, big part of the Bucs defense. I would say, like, just to ask off that, you said you would be a little surprised if there's only 1 defensive guy in the top 10. Like, outside of Parsons, Surtain, is there anyone that you could see surprise, like pop in that top 10 on the defensive side of the ball?
I mean, it would have been Fairly the whole time. I just think like there has to be an edge rusher that's somebody, and maybe it's somebody even like Kwity Paye, who is like the freak factor, which I personally wouldn't pick him in the top 10. But there's so much value. We know like the most valuable positions, are quarterback, offensive tackle, and that edge rusher, like in the modern NFL. And I just can't see that. Like, look at the year that Farrell went number 4 to the Raiders. Like, we were all like, what?
That was a shock.
Right. There could easily be somebody like that who a team falls in love with, especially this year when they haven't had as much time to pick them apart in person. I just think there has to be an edge rusher, whether it's him or so. I mean, I guess you could say that's Parsons. Parsons is more of a linebacker, but he can do it all. But I think there's going to be a second guy that pops up, and it might be Paye. I wouldn't, like I said, Paye's on Woody's like, bust list potential. Yeah, so I wouldn't take him, but I could totally see, somebody like me, somebody who's enamored with those physical aspects, taking him in the top 10.
So who is on your bust list potential?
Yeah.
Because this is a fantastic list. Mitch, we need a bust list.
I prefer the all-name list, but
let me look at who I have on my board here. But I like right now Kwity Paye is leading the way. I do have a little bit of concern. He's not on my bust list, but Slater from Northwestern, I do think there's something there to the, I know it's his arms are too short or whatever. I worry about taking him as high as they're thinking about taking him, and I worry about the comparisons or the some people thinking he should go above Sewell because, like I mentioned, I'm a Sewell homer. I think he's a no-brainer. Now, I do think Mac has bust potential. I mean, I love Mac, and I think he's going to be successful, but it's a gamble to take him at 3. When we were talking 15 or 20, okay, it's a gamble just because of how much they had to pay for him. Also, Zach Wilson, like, I just in my mind, like, think back to watching Zach Wilson against Tennessee when I didn't know who he was. And I mean, he played against a Tennessee team that lost to Georgia State, and I think they put up like 19 points or whatever. He threw a touchdown to win the game. Like, it was a crazy play if you go back and watch it now. But I just like, the NFL draft nerds getting excited about incompletions. Oh, he even makes incompletions look amazing. I'm like, guys, calm down. Like, what are you
that was
doing?
like when Mahomes threw that incredible pass in the Super Bowl and it was incomplete. And then people were like, I bet Tom Brady couldn't make this pass. It was like,
but incomplete.
Well, so that's the thing, and Jen said it earlier. So Jen has a coach's mind, like when she's thinking about the top 10, and us media nerds are like, let's write about the sexy offensive players, and that's who we think are going in the top 10. You have to remember that these football minds are not like that, and I think that they're going to find guys that they like, even a guy like Greg Russo, like had Greg Russo played his season, I think he's a no-brainer slam dunk top.
I heard some crazy stat about him that he had like 35 tackles for a loss last year or something.
Yeah, his redshirt freshman year. Yeah, and if you look at him, I mean, he's only been playing. We have video of him from high school where he thought he was a tight end, and he looks like Gumby. I mean, he weighed like 180 pounds. Wow. So like, this is a guy who's still developing, and so I think he has a lot of value there. I worry about Jalen Phillips, who's a guy that I could also see being in that top 10 discussion that we talked about. Maybe somebody surprises. He was like a total blue chip recruit for us, top 5. But I mean, you have to think about the health issues. He medically retired from football, and Miami turned him around, and now he's back. He was obviously great, but I just wonder, like, he was playing with Roche at Miami, who I think helped him by taking a lot of attention off. And I think he's a guy who's being undervalued. And I just worried that, like, what if Jalen gets hurt again? One more concussion and his career might be over. And I wouldn't, obviously we don't want that to happen. I hope he stays healthy, but that would be a sort of a red flag for me if we're talking about a first round pick.
Now you brought up Mac. I know we've talked a lot about him already, but at number 3, a lot of people, especially fans and the media, don't think he should be the pick. Maybe just give your opinion on why you think he should be the pick and why you would want Mac Jones as your quarterback.
Well, so I was arguing with George Reister, who is an NFL tight end who played in the league for the Jaguars for a long time. Now he's a media guy, and he was texting me shirtless pics of Mac, making fun of him. He looks so dumpy or whatever. I think that stuff's overblown. Like, what's the difference? Somebody tell me what's the difference between him and Tua. He put up better numbers than Tua, and he didn't have Ruggs and Judy to throw to. So, like, why did we decide that Tua is like a slam dunk, and we took Tua when he's had like a devastating injury? And yet Mac is like so ridiculous. A lot of people laughed at the Chargers last year when they took Justin Herbert. And I mean, there's a lot of teams that, the teams ahead of him wish that they had Herbert. Herbert looks amazing. And Herbert surprised me because, people around him always told me, like, he's weird. He's like a nerd. Like, he's not personable. He doesn't talk. Like, I was thinking, like, how's he going to lead a team? And obviously all that stuff is out the window. I think Mac's got the intangibles, and I think, like, he has the tape. Watch the tape. Like, he put it on film, and you say, oh, people are running wide open. Well, Jalen Waddle got hurt like 3 games into the season, and it didn't matter. Like, so not only did he not have Waddle, he didn't have Waddle, and he didn't have Ruggs and Judy. He didn't have 3 first-round receivers that Tua had, yet he still easily put up bigger numbers than him. So
I need to ask this question for our producer, Matthew, out there. He wants to know who the Bills are taking, man. Who are they
What do
taking?
the Bills need? He's a big Bills.
I know they're at
Mafia
like
fan.
30. Nobody's talking about them, but we need to know.
So I don't know. I personally think they have to go defense. I mean, you have to view the amount of stuff they paid for Diggs kind of as like, okay, much like we were talking about the Cardinals earlier. You got your offensive guy last year. You got to go defense, and I think it's whoever the best of the bunch is available. Those guys we mentioned, Russo, Phillips, some of those edge rushers. I think that's what I would take. If I was a Bills fan, I'm sure he has. Who does he want? Like, who is his dream? I know he's refreshing the mock drafts over and over again.
I have no idea, honestly. Trade up for Pitts, he says.
Okay, sure.
Good
yeah.
luck.
Why don't they? Yeah, exactly. That's
Why
it.
don't
So
you spend your whole roster? They'll trade up for Pitts for your quarterback.
yeah, exactly. Like come on. Everybody, it would be nice to trade up for Fitz. What are you trading for him?
I think. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say my boy Gabe Davis is very underrated on Buffalo, and I think with him, with him and Diggs, I think the receiving core set there.
Yeah, for sure.
Some of the teams that we haven't talked about are those that fall a little bit later in the draft, which kind of become really interesting, right? Like, I know personally that Seattle gave me heart attacks last year as a defensive person. When your secondary is leading you in sacks, I kind of want to throw my whole D-line to the wolves. But have you heard anything about Seattle? Can they get some defensive changes in there? What do you think that they're going to do?
Well, it's so weird because it's like the rumors were like, oh, Russ is mad. All they care about is defense, and you're kind of like, well, do they? I mean, obviously during the heyday there when we had the Legion of Boom, that was the case. But, they sort of let some guys go. They let those guys go. They kind of thinned it out. I don't know. I mean, the question is like, other than Parsons, like, where's the linebacker? Who is the guy that we really think can be the impact playmaking linebacker? I personally think Dylan Moses, who once again he's got the injury red flag. Now he's not a first round pick, but he would have been had he not torn his ACL last year. I think if you can get a guy like him in the second or third round, you're talking about like a leader of your defense for a decade potentially. So somebody like him, I would like, but I think they could use some help. You mentioned the secondary is what are we talking about? I love Ugo Amadi. He's a 4th round pick they got a couple of years ago from Oregon, and a kid that I loved as a player, and he's kind of become a leader for them. But even when we had the Griffin brothers are gone now.
Right.
So, I mean, I think they have a lot of holes on that defense they have to fill. And if Pete Carroll's a defensive guy, like Russ says, he should be able to have a few people in mind.
Yeah, I mean, I hear the defensive guy all the time, but I don't see the defensive moves, right? And I know we talk a whole lot of offense, but I would be remiss if we didn't get a little bit of that defense in there because it's really not been talked about. And I mean, there were some glaring problems on some defenses last year, namely, I said they were the Alice Cowboys last year because there was no D in Dallas, and ouch, it was painful to watch, right? And now you're going to have a remake there, but I haven't seen as much of the movement as I would like to, or even heard the conversations around the defensive side of the ball. And I know it's not as good a defensive class. I mean, we've got quarterbacks for days. We've got freaking, wide receivers that could cause a slide.
Corners.
But
there are a lot of corners.
There are a lot of corners, which are hard to find.
Yep.
But I'm not seeing any of the trenches like the dogs other than one name.
Right. Yeah, the corners, I like J.C. Horn a lot too. Him and Surtain, I mean, it's kind of the same thing. You're talking about the family pedigree, A lot of people like Trevon Moehrig from Moehrig, is that how you say it, from TCU?
Moehrig, yeah.
TCU just seems to spit out like a first round pick on defense every
Random.
year. Um, but I wasn't like, I mean, and maybe I know a lot of people like him. I just wasn't super familiar with him as a player. Even though I watched him a lot, I just don't remember. A guy I really like, I should have mentioned earlier, is Zaven Collins from
Yeah,
Tulsa. Tulsa's
I do too.
defense, like somehow I ended up watching him play a lot this past year. I mean, he was all over the field, dude. Just a playmaker, like nose for the ball. Like, if there was a fumble or something, it's like he was either causing it or recovering it. And they had they had a couple long corners that I think we're probably going to hear from in next year's draft. They were just really a good defensive team, and it had a lot to do with him being the quarterback of the defense and just being a consistent playmaker. And Tulsa's not like a sexy team, and I totally get that.
Yeah.
But you watch them play like good offenses. Like they played UCF, who put up, UCF's known as like an offensive machine. And I think UCF was up like 3 touchdowns in that game. And then Tulsa like flipped the switch and completely shut them down and like came back from 19 down or something in the fourth quarter to win. And Collins was all over the field. So I forgot it, but even I forgot about it when I was talking about linebackers.
Yeah.
That's
No, I love him too. I think he's an awesome player. You brought up Surtain, Horn. Another guy that I've been intrigued by at corner, another junior, is Asante Samuel Jr. Do you have any thoughts on him?
Oh yeah, total. Asante Samuel is the perfect example of like so many teams passed on him or didn't push for him as a recruit because he was short. These teams would rather take a 6'1" dude who can't cover
Yeah.
because they think they could teach him how over a dude who's already a lockdown corner. Like Asante Samuel is short. There's no doubt about it. But I promise you, never a worry about him as a prospect. And I think the height might keep him out of the first round. But like, once again, I have no doubts he's going to be successful. Total dog factor through the roof. I mean, this guy, like, he was like a jamming specialist in high school. He loved to just like drive dudes backwards out of bounds. I mean, just like he had that edge to him. And a lot of times the sons of these NFL players, people want to go at them like
Right.
at camps or in games. Everybody like, oh, you think you're Asante Samuel Jr., blah, blah, blah. I'm going to show you. Like, no, man, he was not having it. And like, he used to have battles. I mean, him and Jerry Jeudy would go to war at these events. And like, it was so fun to watch them go head to head. And yeah, I love him. I forgot about him too, but yeah, he's a guy that I really loved as a prospect, and we ranked him really high, and everyone's like, oh, he's a midget. He's terrible. He's short, but like, he can play. It doesn't matter. I will take a 5'10" corner any day of the week. Like, I have no problem with a 5'10" corner. I think the size can get overvalued
His
sometimes.
dad was 5'10",
Right.
isn't he?
And Woody, and you know what? It's so funny. You are reminding me of one of my mentors, Mr. Rod Woodson, who does not like big corners. He does not like the taller guys. He wants the smaller, scrappy, jam, take pride, dog factor corners. And it was interesting to me because, here you have a Hall of Famer, right? Not many better than him. And he was telling me that one of the problems often between that you see like a guy who doesn't work out is the coaches say, I need this guy, right? Of the corners you've got, I want this one, and this one. And I can already tell you Asante would be on his board, right? And then they say, okay, well, what do you think about these guys? I don't want those guys. Those are not the ones I want. And then the draft comes or the free agency, and he's like, oh, look what I got. Everything that I said I didn't want. Right. And he's like, and then you want me to make them work, even though based on our scheme and what we're asking them to do, they're not really equipped for it. So I can tell you Rod Woodson would be all over Asante Samuel Jr. because he wants the fighters. He's like, you'll get dog from those guys. They don't want somebody who's going to come over and ask to cut their coverage. Like, you got my back, man. You can cut me. He's like, people said that to me. I was like, that's an insult. You're going to have nothing to do if you think you need to cut coverage for me. Right. And he's like, it's just a different mindset, especially if you're going to put somebody one-on-one in the corner, you need the dog factor.
Yeah.
Much more than if you do another inch.
And I think the tall guys are honestly like unicorns. It's like 1 out of 10. Like
Sure.
Surtain is that guy. I have no problem. And even like Derek Stingley in next year's draft, he's that guy. I mean, JC Horn's 5'11", I think. Like, I mean, I don't know what he measured, what he says he is. I think he's more like 5'11". And
He's a
I
pretty
just,
big corner though. Like
right. But like, the biggest mistake coaches make, and this is college coaches too, and we see them fall, especially down here in the SEC. They're like, oh, they'll take a 6'1" receiver and be like, I'm going to turn him into a corner. It's like, dude, you've got a 5'10" dude who's going to end up going to Kansas State, like Duke Shelley on the Bears. He's too small. He's too short. He goes to Kansas State, and then he's in the NFL, and he beats out. He's starting for them. And he's beating out guys who were 6'1" because he can cover. Like you can't. I just don't think you can really teach someone how to flip their hips like that. If they're big and tall and stiff, they're going to be big and tall and stiff. You're not going to loosen them up. So
that's right. That stiff factor is a big one. The other thing that I see that we're gonna start having to evolve to is the guys who can go with the pits, right? Yeah. That you've got somebody on defense who can size, strength, speed match some of these, freak guys that are coming out like a Metcalf, like that. And I don't think we've really started yet accounting for that, because it's such a tough thing for a defense if you have to personnel match all the time, right? And you're now taking people on and off the field. First of all, you're tipping your hand, but second of all, it just becomes really tough, because who do you have to go for those guys? You sure don't want them necessarily with a linebacker. And do you have any secondary players that can take it? Would be interesting to see if you could have somebody like Surtain, who could be multiple and even play some of that interior too with these guys, because you're going to need them, right? Like, and we haven't evolved yet enough on defense, I think, for those kind of matchups.
Yeah, Jen, I think the Patriots have been trying to do that for years. I mean, with as much man-to-man coverage as they play. I mean, I remember when they were putting Talib on Jimmy Graham, they put J.C. Jackson on Travis Kelce. I mean, they've been trying to find these corners and safeties. The idea behind Kyle Duggar was similar. So do you see anyone, Woody, in this draft that would be a guy like that?
Well, that was where my Shaun Wade comparison came in. I think he's perfect for like matching up with guys like Pitts, like those big athletic tight ends. I think he was playing out of position being on the outside last year, because that's where he was needed. But like, I think in the NFL, that's where he's going to fit. A lot of people like Kelvin Joseph from Kentucky, who started at LSU. And I think he's a guy with like a ton of buzz, like moving up the charts late. I would not take him ahead of Shaun Wade. I mean, just, it would be a bad mistake to me if Shaun Wade falls behind him. And like I said, people are going to laugh at me because Shaun Wade was like a butt of the joke at Ohio State, but this last year. But we've got like 5 or 6 games of Kelvin Joseph, and all of a sudden we're talking about him as a first-round pick. Like, let's slow our roll. Another guy though he's not a corner. He thinks he's a safety. Is Jacoby Stevens from LSU. He slimmed down for his pro day. I promise you, if he would just bulk up and play outside linebacker, the dude will be a force. Like, yeah, he was a tackling machine for them. He got exposed in coverage at times because they insist on him playing safety. I thought for sure Patrick Queen leaves, Jacoby's going to slide into his role, and he's going to be a first-round pick this year. Instead, like I said, he tried to slim down. He's been fighting it since he was like a freshman in high school. The first time I saw him play, I was like, Jacoby, you're outside linebacker. No, I'm a receiver. No, I'm a corner. I could be corner. We have NFL guys who work our camps, and I remember Jacoby Stevens being there at the 5-star challenge and him being like, this guy's an NFL corner. He's an NFL corner. I was like, coach, he's a linebacker. Stop fighting it.
Yeah.
So if I think he's like probably a 4th-round pick, but super value for me, Jacoby Stevens. I think
we're seeing that now in the NFL. Like Keanu Neal is basically converted to linebacker in Dallas. I think there's at least thought that Landon Collins could do the same for Washington as well. But we don't have much more time to go on and talk all day. But just a final couple questions is what's a surprise pick you could see in the first round? Like maybe a guy that nobody's really talking about that you could see going in the first round. And then who's a player that was a pick last year that you think could break out this year?
So I really think we're going to be like, I think we're going to be blown away with somebody. Like whether, I guess, would it be Rondale Moore? Would Rondale Moore be the shock guy? He's 5'7" or whatever. I could see a team talking themselves into Rondale Moore as a first round pick. I mean, the dude is so fast. He's like a little bowling ball. I mean, if you're comparing someone to Tyreek Hill, it's him, in my opinion. And I blew his ranking in high school because I was like, he's too small. So I'm not going to do that again. Let somebody else do that. He's a guy I think could shock people because I don't think he's getting first round buzz, but
I don't think so.
But I mean, if you're comparing him and Kadarius Toney, he's really got a better resume than Toney does. And he did it at Purdue. He didn't have Kyle Pitts out there at the same time as him. And Toney's had the same history of injuries. In terms of last year's draft, it's kind of tough. Like, are we ready to? What do we think about Tua? Like, are we saying?
I'm kind of off. I've never been a Tua guy personally. It's nothing against the person. It's just what I think about the player.
So, like, I hear a lot of people say, especially like NFL guys, it's like, oh, Tua was supposed to be a slam dunk. Like he was supposed to be a no brainer. I'm like, well, he wasn't really. And I think that they sort of did him a disservice in the offense. Now, I'm like you. I'm not been the biggest Tua fan of all time. Like, but I think, Tua's a gunslinger. Like, they really limited what they wanted to do because they didn't want him to make mistakes. But you can't. It's like trying to do a Brett Favre. Like, you can't put him in. You drafted Tua. You have to let him be Tua. Now, if you don't want to, then don't play him. Play Ryan Fitzpatrick all season. Don't do the switch him around. I think they did him a disservice. Now, I love Brian Flores. I love the coaching staff there, but I think they thought, they did a little too much of that, like playing around, trying to overthink themselves. Javon Kinlaw for the 49ers, like, he was so dominant in college. I think he kind of got his feet wet. He had some really good, flashes, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him break out and kind of become more of a dominant force. And it's hard for,
especially with Bosa back.
Right, exactly. It's hard for the inside guys, but I thought the 49ers, I mean, when they let DeForest Buckner, or they traded him, I thought that was a bad move. I know they didn't want to pay him. I got it. But like in that Super Bowl, if you watch that Super Bowl, if they won, he might have been the MVP of the game.
Yeah.
Like he was everywhere. And we saw the Bucs do it this year. When the defensive line could get to Mahomes, that's a problem. And Buckner was just wrecking the inside of that Chiefs line in that game. And that's a little football nerdy. I get it. Like, line guys, but I like Kinlaw, and I think he's a beast.
I thought, that they should have maybe signed Buckner instead of Armstead.
Yeah, get rid of Armstead. Armstead is like, Armstead's like the Ferrari that you just park in your driveway because it looks nice. Like the production, give me my Jeep Grand Cherokee and DeForest Buckner that I'm going to drive every day because, the limited, it's still got nice rims and the sunroof and everything. But yeah, I think if I was picking between those two guys, I'm with you. I'm paying Buckner, and we saw the impact he had in Indianapolis too. So,
all right, Jen, any final words for your friend Woody?
Oh man, Woody. I mean, to me, this is the good stuff, right? Like, this is the gold when it comes to football conversations. And I just appreciate you really letting us hear your knowledge and get the inside scoop, because you've been there, and you have a vested interest in, sharing the stories of those guys. I am going to go and tell you right now, if you ever unfollow me, we're going to have problems. I will find you in person, that I better get a profile. Like, I'm a little offended. I don't have a profile. Like, I'm just going to say, where's my profile? But I think it's phenomenal, and can't wait to recap with you after this draft and maybe see what we thought, because I think that's definitely a needed conversation.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I've got but luckily, like, I'm not talking to a lot of agents and stuff right now, so I can say whatever I want without having to get my phone blown up at. That's the other thing that they don't tell you about them being in the NFL or NBA media right now.
Right.
If you say something bad about any player, you're going to hear from their agent being like, A, complaining, B, telling you that you're not going to get any more information, and C, I thought oh, why did you blindside us like this? Guess what? I'm just out here hanging out. I'm not on the take, so I can give you guys all types of unfiltered opinions. So I appreciate you letting me talk football and dork out with you guys a little bit.
Hey, it's what we love to talk, right?
Yeah.
It's what we love to do.
That's right.
We love
Yes,
to talk.
That's what we do. That's the Juke. So thank you for joining us, Woody. Thank you for tuning into the first ever live episode of the Juke on Twitch. Make sure you do follow us on all the social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Thanks for watching. Peace.